Order. All right, let's start with the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We do not have a quorum yet, but we have two people that should be arriving in just a few minutes. So we're going to proceed with non-voting items. I did not see, though, that there were any public comments. I want to check just to make sure there's anybody in the audience that wants to speak. All right, seeing none, I think we can move on. The chairman or chairperson update is that Craig is not here. He is in Europe handling some important business meetings, so I am filling in for him today. I was going to put in a few great comments about the Golden Bus Awards and new fleets and everything, but, you know, Daryl doesn't like it when I take his comments, so I'm holding back as much as I can. So why don't we go right into the financial updates, Andy, and then once we have the full quorum, we can move into action items.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. We covered in committee the financial report for February 2024. If we turn to page 4 of the report, from a revenue perspective, we had a strong month with respect to passenger revenue. We'll talk about how passenger revenue was ahead of budget for the month, with ridership tracking slightly below budget for the month. We'll talk about that on a future slide. Slide 5 shows our expense profile for the month. And as we discussed in committee, nothing atypical for February. With the shorter month being 29 days, you see wages and benefits are below the 3-month average. Again, with the hourly workforce, it's largely due to the 29-day period. And on page 6 is the P&L summary. We're very pleased to be 2 months into a brand new fiscal year and be on the positive side of the ledger. Total revenue was $12.6 million, which again was favorable to budget by about $150,000. Total expenses were $12.1 million, which was favorable by $734,000, resulting in a surplus of $600,000, which was favorable to budget by $900,000. As we discussed in January and in committee, our projected surplus at the end of 2024 was budgeted to be around $2.5 million. However, that surplus has not come equally each month, given the fluctuation of sales tax receipts each month. Some months actually are projecting deficits. February was one of those months where we were projecting a $300,000 deficit, but we actually wound up with a $600,000 surplus, which is obviously good from a bottom line perspective. Ridership was slightly unfavorable to budget by 2.7%. Revenue, let's talk about that quickly. Revenue was ahead of budget largely due to bulk pass sales that come at the beginning of the calendar year. Those sales result in positive revenue, but we don't necessarily see that ridership in the same month. That ridership is realized as the year goes on and those passes are used. Non-transportation revenue at $782,000 was slightly unfavorable to budget due to timing of our investment income. County sales tax, as we mentioned, is on budget. It will stay as it'll be equal to the budgeted figure until we leave the first quarter of 2024, at which point we'll look at receipts. Our receipts are 3 months in arrears with respect to county sales tax. So we will be on budget January, February, and March until we receive January's receipts in April. From an expense side, we mentioned wages and benefits were favorable to budget by 1.7%. We were favorable on fuel as well. We had a fuel hedging report last month and showed that we were able to lock in some futures contracts below budgeted amount. Parts and supplies were favorable, and all other was favorable by $435,000, which is primarily driven by timing of projects. If we turn to slide 7, again, we'll just kind of zoom to the bottom line here. Actual surplus that we ran was $577,000 compared to the budgeted deficit of $304,000. with a net to the positive of $881,000 for the month. The last slide, slide 8, just shows, again, as we've seen, our reserve summary, no major changes compared to January. We did receive a reimbursement of about $5 million of federal funds for bus purchases that we had made. So that bumped up the fund slightly from last month, but all the obligations remain relatively similar to last month and the last quarter of 2023. Happy to answer any questions if there are any about the finance report.
So, not necessarily directly related to finance, but it appears that the ridership numbers after 3 years of that steady increase are starting to level off in our percentages. Tied to that, what is the plan for the next free ridership day? Because I know that in the past we've seen significant boosts, not just from that weekend, but that also continue a slightly lesser amount in the future.
Yep.
And then my final question is, if we could go back and look at the free ridership days in the past, if there's a way to do a very simple regression analysis to say we had one free ridership day, this was the holiday day weekend, here is what we anticipate the long-term effect of that was, so that maybe the board can say, all right, we want to set a budget of X number of days to do this in the future to try and drive additional ridership. And happy to discuss that more offline, Andy,
Yeah,
but
we can do
does
that.
that make sense?
Yeah, we can do that. We have 2 upcoming ridership days. We just had the primary election day, and then we'll have opening day as well. We can gather that data.
So even though our ridership was below budget, it was ahead of last year.
Right. Yeah, no, I didn't mean to say that. It's just not the
Yes.
dramatic month-over-month
Yes.
increases. It's more of a steadier
Yes.
increase that we're seeing.
Any other questions? It would be interesting to see what a free ridership day that wasn't a special day
Yeah.
really had along those lines.
Like a Tuesday.
A Tuesday. All right, we can think about that. Also, we should think about how much that costs too, though. All right, we need one more, but Neil, thank you for being here. We need one more for quorum. So we can't do any other action items, but we could do Metro on the Move. Mr. Haley.
Thank you, Blake. So I'll go ahead and do your report.
All right.
Last week we had our Golden Bus Awards. We had a full house. The employees seemed to really enjoy themselves. It is excellent to be able to honor our employees, the great employees that we have. I'd like to thank all the board members that came. It is always appreciated by the employees when they see the board members show up. So thank you all for coming. There's a picture of our 5 winners of our awards, Employee of the Year awards. All very exciting, very good work. Speaking of free ride days, on Thursday for the parade, we are encouraging everyone to leave their cars at home and come down to the parade and the Reds game, and all of our services on Thursday will be free. We're also very grateful to have received 2 grants this month. One is from the Ohio EPA. They have awarded us $3.8 million from their diesel emission reduction grant to replace 4 of our aging diesel vehicles with a hybrid technology as we begin to become more green. We also received an award from the Ohio Department of Transportation for $1 million to support our bus stop enhancement project. As you guys know, we're in the process, and we will start this year replacing all 4,000 of our bus stops. Last week was National Transit Employee Appreciation Week, and you see a couple of pictures here. Councilmember Mika Owens joined us at Queens Gate to say thank you to all of our employees, and board member Gwen Robinson joined us at Bond Hill as we celebrated all of our employees last week. And last but not least, you see a picture here. We have received 10 new access vehicles, and I'm going to parrot John. We can do math, There are only 8 in this picture because when we took the picture, there were only 8 here. But we do have 10 new access vehicles. They all have the newest edition of our logo and whatnot on them, and you will see them out on the road very soon. The employees of Access are really, really, really excited about getting new vehicles. Our Access fleet is very old, as the diesel vehicles had stopped being made, and it's been very difficult to get Access vehicles. So we're real excited to have 10 new vehicles in our fleet. And that is Metro on the Move. I'd be really happy to answer any questions you all have.
I wanted to add something on the Golden Bus Awards. It was my first time being able to be there, and I was deeply impressed by the culture, the positivity of everybody there, and not just the award winners, who were quite impressive, but all the nominees as well. And we had videos about them and their contributions. And I have to say, every single one of them probably deserved to win because of their impressive work. And, we have the Silver Wheel Awards in Planning and Ops every week. And they all funnel into the Golden Bus. Please, in Planning and Ops, pay attention to what these amazing people are doing. It's really, really quite a great thing. We are waiting on action items for one more minute. So because I am a transit nerd, I'm going to ask John to tell us a little bit more about the new Access vehicles and why these are an especially good addition to our fleet.
And Natalie, you want to pull the picture up there? Yeah. The new branding catches you, right? It puts our Access customer, first and foremost as we look to reinvent and improve. But the real detail here is these are low floor buses. So when you think about boarding a wheelchair on board, they typically have lifts in the back, right? And that comes with a number of issues. Certainly securing the chair, very important. The driver interaction with it. It's also our top mechanical failure on the Access fleet. So when you think about a low floor vehicle like this, ramp comes out. It's a manual ramp, so you eliminate any kind of power system failures for that. Easy on, easy off, quick boarding, safe boarding. We can't wait to see what our Access customers think about the new low floor ramp.
I'd also like to add the age that vehicles should be replaced is every 5 years. The life cycle is about 5 years. I don't think right now, prior to getting these vehicles, we have any Access vehicles that are less than 9 years old.
Well, yeah, our last purchase was 2019, right? But the average age of the paratransit fleet is beyond what the max life should be of the paratransit fleet. So kind of let that sink in. They're older on average than the fixed route buses that should get more than twice the life. There are incredible chassis and supply chain issues when it comes to this vehicle. They're not going away for years. Looking at industry projections, so getting these new buses, the whole buy is 16 or 17. We are also looking to get retired buses from other local paratransit fleets that actually have fewer years and miles than parts of our active fleet. So any number of ways that we can improve the Access fleet, reduce mechanical failures, improve the customer experience. Just as Daryl mentioned, that this is certainly a concern that has heightened attention from the organization, no doubt.
Our customers should be very pleased. You want to spend a few minutes on the 40-foot buses, what we've got coming in?
Sure. So later on this year, the fixed route bus will be 19 buses this year. Now we're still on a 25 per year purchase schedule. 6 of those are battery electrics. Right now, those are set to arrive later part of 2025. That's a longer, slower production schedule. But the 19 buses that are come later this year, 7 of those will be of the new hybrid technology. We already have some of those buses in the 2023 fleet going through final inspection and steps to get on the road. A chief part of that is driver training. So they do behave a little differently. The bus actually brakes itself when you let off the gas. There's a regenerative braking feature that recharges the battery. So a feature with the hybrid buses is you have zero emission capability with no infrastructure because the bus takes care of charging itself. But it is something that drivers have to get used to out on the road. They take off a little different, they stop a little differently. So the HR team going through training right now, maintenance team, final inspections on the hybrid fleet. Those will be rolling out very soon. And then in terms of the zero emission technology, we take the manual piece out of it. We will actually code the bus to when it enters certain zones within the city, within the service area, it goes zero emission automatically. So think of going through the central business district or picking up at schools or driving in front of Children's Hospital and some of those dense areas. Instead of having a bus sitting there idling diesel emission, we'll program them to go zero emission automatically throughout the system. So very advanced technology, very much looking forward to that benefit, not only in the 23 fleet, but later on in 24.
Very exciting stuff. Thank you. I can do the planning and ops update as well, since we had no action items from planning and ops this week or this month. And this actually, what we've just been talking about connects to it. In terms of our KPIs, I think we did see a slight improvement in OTP, which is in line with the narrative of what we've been expecting because we have more of our newer operators gaining experience, and we expect an improvement in OTP from there. We did also see a little bit of an increase in missed trips, and explanation from that was that there was one day that was particularly bad, and that had an impact. So the hope is that the trend continues down despite single days like that. So good stuff happening there. I think perhaps the most interesting thing from operations, from commentary in the meeting, was the heat maps for Metro Now. That really captured everybody's attention, and it's fascinating, right? So these bright yellow spots on the map around Kroger's and grocery stores and a few other places. I think there was a Bob Evans as well that seems very popular. But it shows and there was a school as well. It shows where people are going, how they're using it, and that's great. We are providing access to food, access to grocery stores for people through the Metro Now service. And really look forward to expanding that work here in the near future. So I think that was the bulk from planning and ops, except for one presentation from the Council on Aging, which I think we should note. It was informative about the transportation work that they're doing and some of the challenges that they're facing. I don't know if Dan, you wanted to add any about that presentation?
I'd love to, yeah. And I was going to mention it during the red bike discussion, but I think now is as appropriate as any because there's not an action item on it. So I would just say I think the council, I can speak on behalf of the Council on Aging in this situation, and the rest of the board, they're grateful that we're moving forward with looking at funding options. As a recap, the Senior Services Levy, the funds from the Senior Services Levy provides, the Council on Aging receives those funds and provides funding to organizations that provide transportation services. The Home 52 program is a through-the-door program, which is different than, it completes the continuum of transportation services that SORTA provides a great deal of this transportation needs in our community. Paratransit being closest to the Home 52 example, but the Home 52 part also involves a check and a wellness check on the individuals that get transported. A lot of times to dialysis appointments and things of that nature, mental health appointments. I do think it's a relevant fact to know that the city of Cincinnati and the Human Services budget provided $127,000 in funding for these services through the end of 21 to part of 23. But this budget cycle has eliminated funding for Home 52 services. So that's interesting, right? As we look at opportunities to help. The subject that day was specifically about working with Issue 7 funds, our funding, and to see, because the need is so great, has far outpaced the funding for senior services levy dollars, if we are an appropriate vehicle to provide some of the funding for those services. So I think it's an important conversation for the community. We have endeavored not to only provide services that are required by the federal government, but as a county for decades have gone beyond that and providing some transportation services. So that's my brief recap on the subject, if that's helpful.
It is. Thank you very much. And I think there are a lot more questions about this type of service. And so we've referred it to staff to investigate and answer those questions.
That's exactly
and then
right.
we can keep the discussion going from there.
And Suzanne Burke, who was here that day, she sat in our chair, right? She was the former chair of SORTA. She sat on our board for 6 years, I believe. I don't think any of us ever served with her because we're all relatively new. But she certainly has a good perspective on transportation services in the county. This need existed, and the Council on Aging filled that gap. And so that's just relevant information.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Blake.
Did Gwen serve with Suzanne? Maybe. A little bit overlap. Never forget about Gwen's experience. All right. I think we are through most of our non-action items. Yeah.
Since we got an award, $1 million award for bus stops, I would love to have Haled, if he would, come up and talk about where we are on replacing our 4,000 bus stops and other customer amenities that are in the plans for this calendar year.
Thank you, Aled.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. So we have about 4,000 stops, almost exactly like 3,800 of them. And I'm sure you've seen many of these examples where the sign, the bus stop sign, is either on a metal post. That's best case scenario. Sometimes they're on telephone, wooden posts, 35 feet in the air. Some cases they're missing, they're bent, they're kind of destroyed, and so on. And there's no consistency. Some bus stops even don't have any of these signs. It's just an orange ribbon or orange, color on a post. That's certainly not the kind of customer experience we want. We are modernizing our service. We're making improvements to our network services, introducing new modes, and so on. And that's not the image that we want to project. Certainly, it doesn't help customers to find where the bus stops are, so they can catch the bus from that particular location. And so for the past year or so, we've been working on coming up with a new design for these signs that are not only more attractive, but easier to read, that convey more information, better information. And through our contract with DAP at UC, the DAP program, professors and the students, worked on coming up with some design concepts. And we've been working with them for the past 9 months or so on that. We have selected a couple of those concepts. And right now we are producing prototypes of these signs, the both concepts. And those will be stationed at Queensgate facility, Bond Hill, Access, as well as here. And we're going to give the opportunity to our staff, as well as board members, when you get a chance to see them, to look at them and then make recommendation on which of the concepts do you think is a better option for our customers. And we expect this to take place, in the next couple of weeks. So hopefully by late April, we will have selected the final design, and then we'll move on with the production, and we'll put out an RFP to manufacture these and install them. We expect, this is, I mean, again, it's almost 4,000 bus stops, so it's not an easy task. We expect this to take over a year. We're already working with the city to deal with the issue of getting permits and all of that. So that's kind of like, it's in the works with the city. Another piece to that, kind of like a separate project, but related to it, is also having what we call e-paper signs. So some stops, bus stops that have high ridership, will also receive e-papers. These are kind of digital signs, about 16 to 22 inches high, and we can provide real-time information in terms of the scheduling information and other information. And it's all run through Wi-Fi. So if things change in terms of schedules, maps, we don't have to go and physically change things. That will be done Wi-Fi wise.
Absolutely amazing. I could listen to the bus stop changes and improvements all day because it's so important facing all our riders. So I can't wait to see these prototypes. So you let me know the second it's up, and I think a lot of the board members do. And I have worked with the e-paper in the past, and it is absolutely amazing in that real-time function that you're talking about. We do have a quorum, so we can move forward and take action on a few items. The first of which is the minutes from last month. I would move passage of them unless there's any questions, concerns, changes.
Second?
Properly moved and seconded. Do we need roll call on this, or is it voice?
Voice, please.
You would think after 6 years. All in favor of passing the minutes from last month, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say left. Any abstentions? The minutes pass. Now we can move right into the finance meeting. Sonia?
All right, thank you. Our action items are approval of appointment of the Ohio Transit Risk Pool Board of Trustees. The motion is to approve appointment of the Chief of Staff as the alternate trustee to the Ohio Transit Pool Board of Trustees to serve and vote in absence of the voting trustee CEO.
Any questions, discussion? All right. Voice vote on this one.
Mr. Bryce? Mr. Etheridge?
Yes.
Mr. Driehaus?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Metz?
Yes.
Ms. Moss?
Yes.
And Ms. Taylor?
Yes.
I meant roll call. But thank you for doing what the right thing was, Natalie. Appreciate you. All right. We have another item.
Yes, our second item, we had a long discussion, thanks Pete, in the committee meeting for
Spicy.
and Metro's potential support of the system. The committee approved a motion to move forward to the full board for consideration. The motion from the committee is as follows: an investment of $100,000 for 1 year, one-time marketing sponsorship partnership with Red Bike, with the stipulation that Metro will be engaged in the decision-making processes for Red Bike's operation over the next year.
I just want to thank the board for the thoughtful conversation last week. Since we met, I think a number of other folks have come in to bring the investment even closer to where they need to be. The Greater Cincinnati Foundation has agreed to make an investment. A public sort of individual fundraising campaign has kicked off, and I know that that's nearing at least $30,000 of individual investments, and some businesses have stepped up. So things are moving, and Councilmember Jeffries will be convening that group again, and it's my goal that more of us are involved in that conversation over the next 6 months to a year. So I just really appreciate the conversation.
So Pete, one thing I noticed is that the city's donating or putting in $197,000, not $100,000. Yeah. Why the extra 97?
I think, as I understand it, they are reappropriating some of the capital dollars that they had in that were flexible enough to be operating dollars, and that also essentially fills that last gap. Right? If you did the calculation, there was still about $100,000 gap. That brings it up to that.
Thanks.
So I know I missed the meeting last week. I was on vacation. I have kind of two things that I want to bring up. They were probably discussed, but just to reiterate here. One, I'm curious how Metro is going to be engaged reading this. With all the things that we have going on, this is, I would say, not even an ancillary effort that we would really want a lot of time and energy from our staff to focus on. So that's one area of concern. And then the other is, while this is a very worthy cause, does it directly align with Metro's core mission of what we do? And I think you could absolutely say yes, because transportation and helping people get where they need to go matters. But is it a precedent that we want to set as a board to say, yep, we want to do this, and then even though we say 1 year, come next year, I think we can also all realize there's probably going to be fiscal constraints again next year. Are we going to say no then? Or are we going to establish a precedent? But just things I think we should think about before we fully approve this.
Yeah, and we talked some at the meeting last week about sort of the alignment with mission and the opportunity for further alignment with our system, and sort of the reality that right now the bike share network and the bus network exist in the same footprints, but in some places, but they don't necessarily work in concert with each other. And so the opportunity to better align that system as they sort of rebuild their services. So that certainly was one of the things we talked about at the meeting related to realigning the service. The conversation we had around fiscal sustainability for them was that all of these partner organizations, the city, Hale Foundation, hopefully us, GCF, et cetera, are all stepping into the breach to say this is worth saving while we define what sustainability looks like, and that each of those organizations would be a part of the conversation to define sustainability. And so our commitment here was a one-time commitment to help bridge that gap so they can build the sustainable plan. In some cities, that involves the transit authority. In other cities, it doesn't. Involves the local government, involves philanthropic partners. In most places, it involves a mix of them. But this was very clearly a one-time investment to be able to be that bridge, so that we could try to revive it and build something that actually is sustainable. And the Interact for Health as an organization is stepping up to fund a consultant that will help them build their sustainable operating model. So Interact, along with putting cash into the sort of the bridge, is putting some expertise in to help build that sustainable approach. So I don't know if that answers some of your questions.
Yeah, it does, Pete. So my takeaway is, reading the press, obviously understand there's a lot of people who really care about this. The past 7 years, it hasn't worked. So we don't want to throw good money after bad by doing the same thing over. And what you said is, we're going to give it 1 year, try and realign to make the networks match, to make it work. And then at the end of that time, depending on what the outcome is, SORTA will no longer be involved one way or the other, and as a funding partner. Am I kind of interpreting that correctly?
No. The challenge they have is they do not have a sustainable operating model.
Right.
They are exploring all of the ways that you build that sustainable operating model, including the fact that sometimes a nonprofit organization running the bike share network is not the only operating model. And so all of those items are on the table. Every single organization who stepped up has said we're investing one-time dollars so that when there's a conversation about sustainability, we come back to organizations like this and the city and the foundations and their board to address what are potential solutions. And then all of us would have to address whether we want to be a part of that.
Okay. So, again, I recognize I'm a non-voting member of the board, but I would have concerns about establishing a
Your
precedent
points are very important. Please continue.
where we come back again next year and have the same discussion to again contribute money to something that doesn't have a sustainable financial model. So,
Reevaluating what had happened over the last
Yeah.
year.
And we'd be evaluating a new business plan, essentially. Yeah.
The way I see it is we'll know well before that point whether we're going to be a continuing part of it or not. And because it's going to start right away, the reimagining of Red Bike and what its future is going to be. And I'm going to admit, I've had a hard time over the past several weeks as I consider this, getting to the point of supporting it. But when I hear this, if it goes away, it's not coming back. And there are transit systems that run these type of bike share systems and have made the choice that this is something valuable for their systems. I do get to the point that I can support this one-time investment and the energy behind it for the next year for board members to help shape it and see if it is a long-term part of our transit solutions, or if maybe it's another model that is in the city, but we don't participate in financially. We'll see. We'll see what happens. And in some ways, it is a lower cost investment in building this type of intermodal transportation solution to go with our transit system to see if this could happen. I have some other concerns, and I think it's important that some of the members of the board who are not here, like their voices is heard. They did not think this was a part of our mission, and that we shouldn't support it. And they may be right. And that's one of the difficulties about this vote. We don't know what the outcome's going to be, but we know that if it's not supported, it's going to go away and it's not going to come back. So I hope that everybody can consider that. I have one other point that I think the board really needs to consider. If it's going to reshape itself to align with the transit system, it's probably going to cost more than the operating funds that it needs for this year, right? It came up in that meeting that it costs $10,000 to put in a new stop, probably not quite as much to relocate a stop, but if we're doing some changes, there's going to be some cost involved there. And so we have to pay attention to that as we make changes. And that's why we have to be involved from day one and help to contribute to this coalition.
Thanks, Blake. Blake, one other thing to note, just for, since there are so many folks who aren't here, I did hear from Gwen in between the board meeting and last time that she was supportive of this, and then obviously had talked with Craig as well. So just so folks have that context.
So, final follow-up question. At this point, assuming that this goes forward, what, Daryl, Andy, for y'all, what do you anticipate the impact is on you and your staff as far as additional workload? And I realize you're making a swag right now, but like a lot.
I think mostly it's just going to be some discussion. I think understanding there are two pieces. From a policy perspective, we're going to be engaged. I think we're going to have to talk to the board a lot about it. I mean, this is really a policy discussion. It's not a difficult thing to do to contribute money to something. It is this the right thing to do? The questions that were asked of us that we're now spending time on are from this board. We were directed to learn more about that connection between public transit and bike share, right? I think everybody knows that part of bike share is recreation, which is not part of our mission, and part of bike share is transportation, which is part of our mission. Where does that line hit? So we just got a big dump of data from Red Bike, and our planners are cutting through that. But over the next year, it'll be a few days of time for each of us to stay engaged, but I don't think it's a significant draw on our staff resources, and I don't think it'll pull us away from our other priorities. I think us being in the room is going to be important, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand how transit works and will make decisions about transit with us not at the table. So I think us being there is important to understand those dynamics, but I don't see a huge draw. I don't know if Daryl has any other thoughts on that.
We are committed to, as this process moves forward, to come back to the board, to keep the board updated on how the conversation's going, so the board can make those policy decisions that will be needed in the future.
On that front, I would suggest that we think about what committee of the board wants to tackle this, and so that we have regular, ongoing board level conversations about it. So that would be one of my recommendations, that we sort out between now the next time we get together is, I know Sarah had suggested the infrastructure and bike committee seems like a logical place. It's also not a place where we have major agendas each month. And so if that committee wants to start meeting more, if we wanted to bolster it, I think that would be a good use of time.
I think several other people have suggested that solution as well. And I do also want to say that we don't have to bring all the solutions with our staff time. It is on the coalition and the Red Bike leadership as well to bring those solutions and have that dialogue over the next year. And that's why I really mean it by next year when we would have a follow-up on whatever action item, like the outcome will be written in the work that's done starting now. And if there aren't those solutions, it's going in a different way. So any other commentary? Yeah.
I think one thing that we haven't talked about at all, we've said the words marketing sponsorship, but do we know what that looks like? And is there any kind of potential ROI on that sponsorship that we would be getting back from being featured on the bikes in any way that could be calculable?
We've just begun talking about what that might look like. We are able, through Issue 7 funding, we are able to purchase, marketing space and spend on advertising and branding and those things. Mm-hmm. We can't make a charitable contribution to a 501c3 operation. So that is part of what we need to figure out with Red Bike. We've had preliminary discussions with what could we do at stations, what could we do with the system on the website to get a return out of that marketing investment. So that's a parallel conversation that's happening, but it also informs future conversations. This organization, our legal counsel's made it clear to us that we can't make a charitable contribution. So that's one of these things that has to be figured out over the next year is what is a sustainable model for Red Bike? What form do each of these things take? But that's exactly why that language is there. And we don't have, we would bring that package back to the board so you all are educated on what we're getting for that contribution.
I think that'd be interesting to also educate on maybe that we're bringing something back with this money that we're spending.
Sure.
I think there's opportunity for this to be mutually beneficial, and I think that I don't see them continuing to have great success without a partnership with us. And so those are things I think that are really valuable to consider.
Any further commentary, questions?
I'll move approval of the motion.
Second.
All right. Pete has moved the motion. Sonia has seconded.
So now's really the time
Comment.
for discussion, right?
What?
So
Yes.
usually you have the motion, second, and then discuss, but that's okay. So just Brianna, so like when you say, I'm curious more than
Yeah.
anything else.
No, absolutely.
About our involvement, how it might not be sustainable without us. Do you mean from a financial standpoint or professional services standpoint?
Oh, I think across the board. I was not specifically thinking financially, though.
Okay.
I think just in terms of aligning our systems
Yeah.
and providing that multimodal transportation option for people in the city.
Okay, cool. And Trent, yes, a lot of the things you brought up, we discussed in the committee meeting and got some pretty strong and good answers. The only clarification on the comments you made is that I think a lot of us thought, boy, this is a shame that this happened all of a sudden, it feels like, to a lot of the community partners. And that's disconcerting, right? That the funding model just collapsed. Well, really, it was primarily one funding partner who pulled funding. I wouldn't say that that indicates that all 7 years were a failure for their mission and their purpose. It changed. Their funding model changed. They had to navigate that, and I'm not here to defend how they navigated that, but we weren't asked to put in $500,000. We were asked to be a partner and provide $100,000, and it felt like the sense of all of us volunteer board members was pretty supportive with the assurance that it wouldn't be precedent setting, and the fact that our people are part of the decision-making process. So we felt I for one felt pretty satisfied with the responses we got.
Just to add to that, I think the, 140,000 rides is, if nothing else, a proof of concept.
Yeah.
Making that financially sustainable is the conversation, not proving that people want to use the service, at least in my head.
Now we've had some discussion at the appropriate time, as well as the.
I started this meeting by saying I love
Really?
Robert's Rules of Order, and then I got it all wrong.
Well, heck, last week we put it on the Finance Committee agenda. Not sure
We
how
might have to
appropriate
have
that
a
is.
briefing on the rules here at a future board meeting. But all joking aside, I think we do need to take a vote, and it will be roll call. Last comments? All right, let's go ahead with the vote.
Mr. Bryce? No. Mr. Etheridge?
Yes.
Mr. Driehaus?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Metz?
Yes.
Ms. Moss?
Yes.
And Ms. Taylor?
Yes.
Thank
What? I would like to ask clarification. We have a quorum. We had a majority in favor. Does that pass?
Yes.
Yes. 6 yeses and 1 no, yes.
Just want to make sure that we didn't need 7 yeses. Okay, so motion passes. I'm very proud of this board and the discussion last week and the discussion today and how we are participating and taking on some very difficult questions. So thank you, everybody. Anything else from finance?
No, that's all.
All right, thank you very much. I think we went over planning and ops, and believe it or not, that gets us through all the items on the agenda except for new business. Is there any new
I
business?
have none, I promise.
All right, I'm hearing no new business, but I think we do have an executive session, so I will go ahead and make the motion that we move into executive session. So under section 121.22G3, conferences with an that are subject or pending